Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our monthly installment of VJF training with LWIAs and our various organizational partners. Again, welcome, everyone. Today's session will be pretty simple, straightforward, and to the point. What we're going to go ahead and do is just go over the updates that have been rolled out regarding the VJF tool since our last meeting. And for the folks that did attend the last session that we held, you might recall David went over in depth some of the new features and tools, if you will, that we are looking to roll out regarding the VJF tool. A lot of those are still on production right now. We still are waiting on our programmers to finalize those updates. So those have not been rolled out officially as of yet, but stay tuned, hoping possibly by our next meeting that some of those updates will be rolled out, and we can go over that with you a little bit more in depth and show you kind of the hands-on way in which those new tools will be implemented. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and go into the updates we have on the screen right here. As you see, for the month of May, kind of a new update that we rolled out was a planning guide for LWIA staff. If you all recall, ideally, we'd like to start kind of handing over the reins to a limited extent to the LWIA staff to be able to create and schedule and plan some of these VJF events, just because you guys obviously have boots on the ground in your areas. You're able to react, if you will, be proactive with some of the employers who are needing to attract job seekers. And so what we went ahead and did was create, obviously, these guides that I'm going to go over here, just quick start guides to help guide you through that process, make things a little bit simpler, if you will. And as you see on the screen, and of course, I'm going to go through each of these individually, you'll see we have a quick start guide for single employer events, quick start guide for multi-employer events, and then also for legislative events as well. So as you'll see here, this is just a breakdown of what I just stated. So you'll have the planning quick start guide, single employer event guide, multi-employer event guide, and the legislative events guide. Right here is what we suggest starting with. And it's just a quick start guide, as you see here. Step by step, we kind of break down what a virtual job fair is. We try to kind of plant those questions, if you will, that folks need to be keeping in consideration or keeping in mind while planning an event. A lot of you are familiar with this process already. So obviously, when do you want to hold the event? Is it going to be regional or industry based? What's the format going to be? Single session, multiple session? Do you want to cover what local resources are available with job seekers who will be on the call? You see here, again, another document a lot of you folks are probably familiar with who have held VJFs, a timeline for creating multi-employer event, and then also links to the virtual job fair partner guide page, which we've covered numerous times, I know, in our previous sessions, that just lists all of the resources that we have on Illinois WorkNet regarding virtual job fair and virtual job fair planning and creation. So you'll see off to the right here, again, we have videos to kind of complement these quick start guides, if you will. Again, want to try to capture as much as we can as far as, audio visual learning, if you will, and just make things simpler, and also provide kind of a how-to, if you will, on how to actually go ahead and set a virtual job fair up. You'll see here, second step, invite employers to participate. Again, we have a video to complement that as well. We kind of just go over what that process looks like. Spreadsheet to keep track of the employers that you would invite and confirm for the event. How to set up an employer booth, as you see linked there. And then again, just kind of driving that point home that if you want to use the Illinois WorkNet platform, an employer has to submit an employer booth to be able to hold a VJF. Again, step 3 here is coordinate event details. As you see, a lot of you are already familiar with the process and how that goes. So obviously following up with the employer, making sure they're confirmed, making sure they have that employer booth, that they'll have presentation materials if they're going to participate. And then also, creating an agenda for the event as well. And then you'll see step 4 is just final preparations there. And again, this is just to kind of familiarize folks with what things look like leading up to the event, if you will. Again, just driving home the fact that employers who will be participating need to provide presentation materials, finding out who will be presenting, obviously collecting their contact info, and making sure that they get added to any appropriate invites that they need to be added to. And so once you have taken a look at this quick start guide, this will be kind of the launching point, if you will, in the VJF process. So once you've taken a look at the quick start guide, if it's your first time scheduling a VJF, the next thing that you'll want to go ahead and do is select which event you're thinking of holding, if you will. So obviously single employer, is it going to be a multi-employer event? Or in some cases, are you wanting to facilitate a legislative event? So as you'll see here, we have a breakdown as far as single employer event is concerned. Again, and I know during a prior session, I think it might have been 2 meetings back, we went over this exact information with the folks that were on the call. And it just shows what a single employer event, with assistance from Illinois WorkNet looks like, and then without assistance from Illinois WorkNet looks like. And I don't think we need to probably delve too far into this, but again, we would encourage you to take a look at this. Just some simple things for the folks that may not be fully familiar with VJF or have not held a VJF. Again, we do ask, if you do want Illinois WorkNet's assistance, facilitating event, that you give us at least 2 weeks notice ahead of time to allow us, of course, not only to plan the event, but also to market and promote it effectively so that we can try to get the most ideal turnout, if you will, that is possible. And as you see here, again, I don't want to delve too far into this, but just gives you kind of a granular breakdown, again, of what asking for assistance with Illinois WorkNet looks like. And again, what facilitating an event without assistance looks like as well. And then we'll go next here to the multi-employer event. Again, a lot of this is kind of the same deal here. We just need a little bit more lead time if we are going to be involved in the planning process. So you'll see here for a multi-employer event, we ask that we give us at least a minimum of 5 weeks notice, obviously, to be able to facilitate and coordinate and promote the event effectively. Again, the idea here is to maximize turnout, maximize our efforts, so on and so forth. And again, you'll see here just a breakdown of what a multi-employer VJF is going to look like if you request assistance from Illinois WorkNet, and if you obviously choose to go ahead and facilitate on your own. And then we'll move on to the legislative event quick start guide, if you will, here. Again, same type of deal. This just breaks it down as to what the responsibilities will be for each organization or each entity that'll be facilitating. And as you see here for the legislative events, since they tend to be a little bit more in depth, if you will, we do require a minimum of 6 weeks notice if you do want Illinois WorkNet to be involved in facilitating and coordinating those events as well. And as you see here, we break down just kind of in a granular fashion what the responsibilities of the LWIA will be, and then obviously what Illinois WorkNet will facilitate and provide as well. Now, I know kind of during the last session, again, we kind of discussed beginning the process of maybe rolling this mandate out, if you will, for LWIAs to kind of begin the process of trying to facilitate or hold virtual job fairs. So of course, we want to go ahead and check in, see how things are going, see if any events have been scheduled, so on and so forth. And then obviously, if you do have any questions, that you have an opportunity, obviously, to ask those and get those addressed. So I think we'll go ahead and kind of move into that Q&A portion now. And I do want to pause here briefly and just give David an opportunity to include anything maybe that I omitted. And if there isn't, we can go ahead and move forward with that Q&A.
No, I don't believe there's anything else I would add, Daniel, but thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so just got a question here in the chat. It says, what do you mean by legislative event? Is this an event sponsored by a senator or other representative? That is correct. I also think kind of under that purview, if you will, we also, for instance, we're holding an event that's coming up for a Chicago alderman as well. I think we would also place that in that calendar or in that category, excuse me. So yeah, any elected officials that come to Illinois WorkNet or to your particular LWIA with a request to hold a virtual job fair, we would clump that, if you will, into the legislative event category. And just to give you all kind of a background, if you have not participated in a legislative VJF or it's something you're not familiar with, just give you an idea of what the format for that looks like. So typically it's a 3-day event. First day is job seeker workshops, and that'll cover things like resume building, how to navigate a virtual job fair, how to maintain an active web presence, if you will, so on and so forth. Day 2 will be an informational session with employers, and then day 3 will usually consist of a small group discussion or small group interview session in which we create breakout rooms for each employer, and job seekers are allowed to move freely between each room and meet directly with those HR reps that are on the call. So that's what a legislative event typically looks like. And again, it's typically, we're targeting employers that fall within a particular legislative district. So that's typically how those events are formatted and how we run those. Got another question here in the chat for multi-employer event. How long is a session and how many employers can participate, and will there be breakout rooms? Great question. So we'll kind of break that down piece by piece there. For multi-employer events, typically speaking, we like to keep the sessions to approximately 2 hours or thereabouts. We have had events where we've gone 3-4 hours, and we have noticed kind of a marked decrease or drop off in the amount of participants once we pass that 2-hour time frame. Again, it's not necessarily a hard fast rule, but it's something that we do like to try to follow if at all possible. So that's typically how long a session will last. And then how many employers can participate? Again, not another hard fast rule, if you will, but we like to keep employers to about the 10 mark, if you will, as a maximum. 8 to 10 seems to be kind of the sweet spot that we've noticed. And what we mean by that is that employers are allotted enough time to be able to present without feeling too rushed, if you will. And then same as far as I know myself and David as facilitators of the event, it allows us to keep the event on track a lot easier. We've had events where we've had 15, 16 employers on it, and it just becomes a little bit cumbersome trying to juggle all of the facilitation, if you will. So again, we like to keep the employers at a maximum of 10 if at all possible. We can go over by a couple, but again, I think the sweet spot there again is 8 to 10. We can hold multiple sessions. That is something that we do and have done and will be doing in a few upcoming events. So let's say you have 20 employers in mind that want to participate in a virtual job fair. Let us know that, and what we would do is just break it up into individual sessions. So we would take, let's say, 2 consecutive days in a week, let's say a Tuesday and a Wednesday, have 10 employers on one session, 10 employers on the next session. The format would be the exact same for both sessions. We're just going to break it up so that, again, we can keep things on time and also make sure that we're not having an event that spans, 3, 4, 5+ hours. And the last part of the question there was, will there be breakout rooms? That's a great question as well. That is completely up to kind of the organizer, if you will, and obviously if it makes sense in that particular event. So let me elaborate on that. If we do have 10 employers confirmed, and it's, again, if it's 10 employers, it's confirmed, we would say that event would probably be a good event to maybe hold breakout rooms on as far as kind of a ROI or return on investment perspective, if you will. But if, let's say we had an event that was a little bit smaller in scope or smaller in nature, let's say, for instance, we've had events in the past where we've only had, 6 employers confirmed, or let's say we initially had 10, but let's say 4 dropped off. At that point, we don't know, or we wouldn't say that breakout rooms would probably be maybe the most effective use of that time that we have available. So again, it just depends on the scope of the event. We like to use the breakout rooms for the larger events, if that makes sense. We did receive another question in the chat here. It says, are elected officials attached to the legislative events? And the short answer to that question is yes, absolutely. Usually how those events are structured is a staff member of that legislator, if you will reach out to us, let us know that the legislator has expressed an intention to hold a virtual job fair event. And then the planning process is similar to our other multi-employer events, as we stated. We let them know the format, the structure, the expectations, from both partners and the legislator, and then obviously what Illinois WorkNet will bring to the table for the event as well. But yeah, short answer is absolutely the legislators are tied to the event. Their names are used obviously to promote the event. And then we also seek to actively market and promote the event within their district in particular as well. And just an FYI, I think we've held 14 legislative virtual job fairs to date. And I know we've had folks like Congressman Brad Schneider that we've facilitated an event for, multiple state senators, a few state reps, and then of course, we've had Chicago aldermen on the call. We'll be doing an event for a Chicago alderman, I think, later this month as well. So it does span, quite a large reach, if you will. And see a question here. How is this not seen as a conflict of interest? Not quite sure what you're getting at there. If you can elaborate on that question a little bit more. Again, all these services are provided to folks
If I could
free of charge. And then I also want to elaborate too. I know our first legislative event that we held, we were very cognizant of the fact that we wanted to keep it far enough out from a general election. So if that's kind of what you're alluding to, we are cognizant of that again, and we try not to hold events within so much time of a general election so that it can't be seen as promoting that legislator, if you will. As far as party affiliation, I see that's the next question. We don't promote that. We've assisted legislators that fall on both sides of the aisle for the events. So again, that's partisan, affiliation is not something we even add in the promotion of the event. Any other questions? I see another question here that I accidentally looked over. Job fair, as well as a job fair hosted by a village economic department. I think I know what you're getting at there with that question. Yes, we've held events too for various chambers of commerce throughout the state of Illinois. One that comes to mind, I know we did one for the city of Effingham Chamber of Commerce. I know McLean County, Bloomington, if you all are familiar with that area, Chamber of Commerce has approached us to hold an event. I think that's kind of what the question is getting at, but please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong there. Would that be a legislative event then? No, it would not. We typically market those as regional, unless, of course, there's an actual legislator that has made the initial request. If they do loop in as a partner, that Chamber of Commerce, if you will, then we would consider it a legislative event. Hopefully that makes sense. So it's kind of an order of prioritization, if that makes sense. I want to make sure that I kind of explain that deftly here. I don't want to offend any folks that might be on the call, but the legislator obviously approaches us with a request. We're going to make sure, that obviously their vision, what they've got in mind and what they're seeking to achieve. obviously is probably going to be first and foremost. And then obviously we're going to make sure that, all of the other partnering organizations also get what they need from that as well. But again, the legislator kind of has primacy there, if that makes sense. Any other additional questions that I can answer? I'll give it just another minute or so. Again, nothing is a stupid question. It's kind of my own personal mantra. So if you have any questions regarding anything VJF related, it can be these quick start guides, it can be facilitation of an event, anything in general, please feel free to ask. Does not appear that we've received any additional questions in the chat. So again, just want to make another last call. If you do have any questions, please feel free to enter those in the chat or unmute yourself and we'll get those answered for you. If not, again, I just want to reiterate, we've got a lot of, at least what I personally think are a lot of great updates to the tool in the works. They're in the pipeline right now. As soon as we get those finalized, of course, we will bring those back to you during our next or subsequent planning sessions. And of course, we'll go a little bit more in depth into how that's going to look. I know, again, David went over that during our last session there, just to give you all kind of an idea of what to expect. But our hope is that it'll make this planning process a lot more seamless, a lot easier. And it'll also make tracking, much simpler as well. And then allow you to export the data that you need for your individual LWIA a lot easier without having to consult the VJF team necessarily every time you need that information. So again, be on the lookout for that. Stay tuned. If we don't have any additional questions, I think we can kind of wrap up the session here today. Of course, we hope it was fruitful. Hope you learned something. And if you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to myself or David. We're generally speaking, always available, always happy to help, always happy to answer any questions that you have. And we hope, of course, that you have a great weekend. Looking forward to the next session. Thank you all.